Obviously, the big news, surprise upset in yesterday's primaries. Bernie Sanders won West Virginia from Hillary Clinton by a wide margin. It wasn't even close. Donald Trump, obviously the only candidate still officially running, swept up 2 primaries there as well. And there's a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth going on here. I mean, Hillary just keeps imagining that Bernie is going to go away, and it's not happening. And I'll bet the ashtrays were flying against the office walls over at Hillary's last night. And I actually feel sorry for her protective detail, because word is she tends to use them as her personal whipping boys. If things aren't going good, she screams profanities at them, she insults them, and so forth. Now, if you happen to be watching the primary results on Fox News, you got an extra special bonus feature, because apparently during Bernie Sanders' victory speech, Geraldo Rivera just felt like making some very insulting comments, not realizing that his microphone was still live. And Sean Hannity was trying to say, your mic is hot, your mic is hot. So, once again, Fox News displaying less than professional behavior on the air here. Now, Donald Trump is out there saying that he'd like to have Republican unity, but he doesn't need it to win. And I think it's wise for him to be planning on winning without Republican unity, because there are too many in the GOP leadership who absolutely do not want him to be there. Now, the rank and file all seem to be perfectly okay with him. They really like him. You know, he's come into the campaign with this non-politically correct, straight talk, not going to mess around, here's what's going on and here's how we're going to fix it. And Americans have responded to it, because we're sick and tired of the euphemisms and the blame shifting and the excuses that we get from the established political elite money junkies. But most rank-and-file Republicans are just fine with Donald Trump. It's only the leadership that we have to worry about. Now, here's where it gets a little bit interesting. Ted Cruz had said that if he won Nebraska yesterday, he would restart his campaign. Obviously, that did not happen. And today he's back again talking about restarting his campaign if, quote, there is a path to victory, end quote. Now, is he dropping hints for somebody to shoot Donald Trump? Because that's the only path to victory that could possibly open up. And let us not forget, Ted Cruz is ineligible to be president or vice president of the United States of America. He is not a natural-born U.S. citizen as required by the Constitution. He was born in Canada of parents who were Canadian citizens at the time of his birth, at a time when Canada did not recognize dual citizenship, which means Ted Cruz's mother had renounced her American citizenship. Plus, Ted Cruz's parents were not married when he was born. And in the Immigration and Naturalization Act, there is a specific exception. Children born to Americans out of wedlock in foreign countries do not get automatic birthright citizenship. And they're still pushing this guy on us. They've got no respect for the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. If by some machinations Ted Cruz were made president, I absolutely disavow this government. I will not obey a government that is not in compliance with that Constitution. They are not legal. They are not legitimate. Now, we are hearing what may be going on behind the scenes with all this talk about restarting his campaign. I mean, let's face it, as far as the primaries are concerned, Ted Cruz is spinning his wheels and wasting his time because Trump keeps beating him and beating him and beating him. But he's not sitting idle, because we're seeing this alarming article out of InfoWars. Cruz operatives plan to stack rules and platform committees at the RNC convention. So the plan is that they're going to hijack the convention, they're going to try and block Donald Trump on that first ballot, then they're going to kick him out, and they're going to force Cruz on us. And by doing so, they will hand the White House to Hillary Rodham Clinton. Because Hillary Clinton's lawyers will go right to the Supreme Court and say Ted Cruz can't prove he qualifies to be president. And under the 12th Amendment, he can't be vice president. It's just amazing out there. Now, story that came out of Washington Post. Hillary Clinton is a woman and a candidate with seriously complicated woman issues. And they're talking about how, you know, Donald Trump is coming on out and reminding everybody about the serial philanderer Bill Clinton, and how Hillary, rather than reining him in like a normal wife would, just helped him cover it up. Browbeat the women, smear them. Remember the bimbo eruption squad? Hillary was Bill's enabler. He went out and predated on women, groped Kathleen Wiley in the Oval Office on the very day her husband met a suspicious death. So that's that whole issue. And then Hillary turns around and plays the woman card. And there's a certain hypocrisy there. And I've actually gotten emails from Hillary's supporters saying, you shouldn't pick on her. You should let her win because she's a woman. Whatever happened to the feminist revolution, where women were supposed to be treated the equal as men? It seems to be one way. They want the earning power of men, which I don't have a problem with. They want the educational opportunities equal with men. I don't have a problem with that either. But then they want special protections because they're women. That I have a problem with. And I have a problem with choosing presidents based on skin color, gender, orientation. Whatever happened to meritocracy? Whatever happened to finding presidents that we chose because they could do the job, and it didn't matter that they weren't beautiful people. It didn't matter that they dressed funny. Because that isn't what we elected them to do, look good on TV. Now, Sanders is still out there and saying, with some justification, saying the whole Democratic primary process is a rigged system. And he's talking again about the superdelegates. Now, Maine's Democratic Party has moved to drop the superdelegates. It's a good first step. If it weren't for the superdelegates that Hillary's campaign literally bought and paid for ahead of time, the Democratic race would be neck and neck. Bernie Sanders is trailing Hillary in the popular vote by just a very small margin. Hillary's lead is built entirely on those bought and paid for superdelegates. And people need to get it in those superdelegates' face and say, do you understand you're selling out your country for your 30 pieces of silver? Because that's exactly what they're doing. Need to bring back a sense of shame to some of these people. Now, we talked about this yesterday. We're going to talk about it again today. We're going to keep on mentioning this until probably close to the end of the month here. If you are in California and you are going to vote in the California primary, you need to be very careful about how you are registered. Because when you register, you can be Republican, Democrat, Green. You can say no political preference. And most people want no political preference, but there's a box that says independent, and people think that means no political preference. It doesn't. It means the American Independent Party, and it's not made clear. And a lot of people checked that box thinking that means they're not aligned with the Republicans or Democrats, and if they don't correct that, they're going to go into the primary booth and they're going to have a list of names to choose from that aren't any of the ones they wanted to vote for. So if you are in California and you are not sure how you are registered to vote in the primary, you have until May 23rd to check it out. Now, there's an online resource. We have it linked to the front page of whatreallyhappened.com, and it's registertovote.ca.gov. And you can go on in there and check how you are registered, whether you're Republican, Democrat, no political preference, American Independent Party, Green, or whatever else they have in the list out there. And if you're not where you think you should be, you can re-register up until May 23rd. And if you are in California, please copy off that article and send it to everybody else you know in California, because that confusing registration form could cost Bernie Sanders that California primary, because Bernie Sanders supporters are going to go to the polls and they're not going to have his name on the ballot. Now, even at the best, we say that all that we are seeing is incompetence and stupidity. Not enough ballots at this place, software in the voting machines is voting for the wrong candidate. Wrong voter lists get sent out, so people are turned away. Even if we're the most generous and say it was all innocent mistake, it is an absolute disgrace that the nation that claims the moral leadership position of democracy, the champion of democracy, we're bringing democracy to the world whether they want it or not, usually at the point of a gun. It is a shame that our election system is such a joke. I refuse to believe that the nation that put men on the moon cannot come up with a reliable, trustworthy, accurate, verifiable, honest system of elections. If our elections are crooked, it's because those in power want them to be crooked to stay in power. Now, latest polls are showing 44% of Democrats are going to vote for Donald Trump if Hillary is the Democratic nominee. We were looking at the poll numbers that came out of Ohio and talking about them yesterday. They did a couple of matchups. Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump is going to win. Donald Trump versus Bernie Sanders. Sanders is going to win. So the rigged election results notwithstanding, it's very clear that when it comes to the order of candidates, it seems to be Sanders, Trump, Hillary. Now, Judicial Watch, say that 3 times fast, Judicial Watch is starting to provide updates on their cases against Hillary Clinton. Judicial Watch has 2 cases before the court, both of them related to Hillary's email server. And what they have been finding out in the recent revelations, the judge has given them discovery, is that the State Department has been hiding key Clinton emails from Judicial Watch in violation of the court order. Now, that's obstruction of justice, and that should get Attorney General Loretta Lynch fired on the spot. I mean, we're seeing all the signs of cover-up here. We were talking about this FBI interview of Hillary Clinton's aide, and in the middle of the questioning, the aide walked out with her attorney. And they came back a little bit. But, you asked a question that we all agreed was off limits here because, I'm here to help you investigate what criminal and espionage activity may have been going on, as long as you agree not to ask me about what criminal and espionage activity may have been going on. That's what they've done. The State Department has said you can talk to our people as long as you don't ask them if they did anything wrong. It's like when they did the so-called investigation into 9/11. And they talked about intelligence failures, and they never even went to the question of who actually did it. That was just a foregone conclusion. It's another whitewash, and people are sick and tired of government cover-ups. They absolutely are. And as Richard Nixon said, it's not the crime that does you in, it is that cover-up. And there's an awareness of a cover-up, and we need to keep on putting that out there, that there's a cover-up. Now, apparently Sidney Blumenthal was asked by Chris Matthews if he had been interviewed by the FBI regarding Hillary's email server. Blumenthal wouldn't answer the question at all. Refused to confirm or deny, sat there in squirming, which to me means yes, and he knows he said some things Hillary is not going to like. So we may find Sidney Blumenthal getting really, really depressed and shooting himself in Fort Marcy Park. Now, the New York Times is out there on full defensive mode for Hillary Clinton, and they came out with this article, Released Emails Show Use of Unclassified Systems Was Routine. And they're going on saying, there was this time when documents were sent by regular email, and later they were classified, and it was no big deal, blah, 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 blah. The New York Times was not allowing comments on the piece for reasons that would be very, very obvious. The example they used was for non-secure email to be used for documents that were unclassified. They're still trying to claim that Hillary's documents weren't classified until long after the fact. No, we know some of them were classified on creation. In particular, satellite intelligence data is automatically classified on creation. So the New York Times is lying to us again here. And there is still a big hole in Hillary's story about classified information or not. Hillary Clinton never used her secure government email account. She claims she never had classified material on her private email server. The job of Secretary of State involves a huge amount of classified information, so what server did she use? If it wasn't her government server and her private server, was there a third system out there yet to be discovered? I don't think so. We know there's lots of classified information on Hillary's server. We have to ask, and ask again, and ask again, the following question. Remember Chinagate from 1996? Then President Bill Clinton authorized the sale of sensitive U.S. technology to China, and Chinese money was donated to his re-election campaign. Is Hillary playing that same game? Was she selling U.S. secrets delivered via a private email server with weaker security than Ashley Madison in exchange for donations to her charitable foundation? It's a legitimate question to ask. It deserves an honest investigation and answer. Now we've got the story, of course, about Brian Pagliano's emails, which the State Department is saying, by golly, we can't find any of them. Now, Brian Pagliano's the guy who set up or refurbished Hillary's private email server. We're now finding out that the actual hardware dated back to Bill Clinton's presidency, and they had a private email server there as well to keep certain things out of view of government oversight. So Brian Pagliano set up the email server, was working for Hillary Clinton at the State Department, and investigators wanted the emails because Pagliano is apparently at the moment cooperating. He's got a immunity deal. And the State Department came out and said, can't find them. Can't find them. Gosh darn, we've got all the emails up to his hiring and all the emails after he left, and we've got all the emails for everybody else. We just can't find his at all. Golly gee whiz. It's like the State Department doesn't have backups? And doesn't the NSA have all of it anyway? Again, it reeks of a cover-up. And what the State Department has done is obstruction of justice. Destruction of evidence. They can't say it was an honest mistake. Everybody knows that this was going to be an issue. What was the FBI doing? Why didn't they move to secure that data in the first place? They knew Hillary was deleting stuff off of her own server before she turned it over. Now, by the way, about this missing email for Brian Pagliano. Yesterday morning, all three major news networks ignored the story. ABC's Good Morning America, CBS This Morning, NBC's Today didn't mention it. But they did spend 8 minutes and 38 seconds on a new anti-aging gel. Fox News ran the story very briefly, and that was basically it. So, once again, the independent media, that's you, has to do the job the corporate media claims to do, but never does. So grab all the articles about Brian Pagliano's emails vanishing from inside the State Department and flood your social media with them. Yes, the corporate media's got all the money, but we outnumber them. We can force this into the public eye, even over the anti-aging gel on those networks. All right, we're coming up on our first commercial break here, and when we come on back, we're going to be talking about the email server again. We're going to keep on pounding on that issue. And then Facebook's alleged bias. So we're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Now, one of the other things that's going on here with the Hillary Clinton email scandal, which the corporate media, if they're not doing like the New York Times and saying, look, it's no big deal, really, then they're ignoring the story completely. And one of the issues that, for the most part, the corporate media has ignored, of course, is Cheryl Mills storming out of the FBI interview, apparently more than once, and her refusal to answer certain questions. With this attitude of, you're not allowed to ask that question of me, you man, you. There's also a story that FBI Director James Comey is holding a closed-door meeting with reporters today to update them on the case. Why is the door closed if they're reporters? unless what he's in there is telling them what they may not report on. Maybe he's giving them all national security letters. Under no circumstance will you ever mention the possibility that Hillary was committing treason while Secretary of State by selling classified information to foreign governments and collecting and laundering the payments through her foundation. Because a scandal like that, that's going to bring the whole government down. And everybody's worried about their taxpayer-funded paychecks. They want that money to keep on going on in. People love working for the government. You don't really have to do anything. And you're making, about 50% more than private citizens for the same job, even if you were actually doing something, other than sitting around all day looking at online porn. Now, the U.S. Senate has launched an inquiry over Facebook's alleged political bias in the trending news lists. These former employees of Facebook have come on out and said that their job was to make sure certain viewpoints, primarily conservative, were not allowed to show up very high on the trending news display. Zuckerberg is absolutely categorically denying it, but you do have these former employees saying that it was happening, and you have a lot of people who are just wondering why certain articles with a lot of hits on them just never seem to go anywhere. Now, I'd like to make a point here, okay? I think that anybody who's out there trying to distort, conceal, spin away, shout down, hack the servers of citizens expressing legitimate political opinions are in violation of the First Amendment. And you take all these people together, Facebook, all the million-dollar troll army, and you put them all together, there's one heck of a class action civil rights trial to be fought and won. And the problem I have with Hillary's supporters is you're never going to convince them she's a bad person. They already know what she's done. They think it's fun. They think it's cool. They think it's good jollies to subvert democracy and deny other people their voice and their rights. They don't care. But they are committing civil rights violations every time they shut down another opinion through nefarious means. The reason we have freedom of speech is to have an open debate. Person A has their say, person B has their say, the people make up their own mind. It's not supposed to be where person A starts to talk and person B gets out a gong and starts wailing on it and saying, this is my First Amendment right to freedom of speech. It's not the way it's supposed to work. And for everybody who thinks otherwise, if you really want to live in a dictatorship without freedom of speech, there are plenty of other nations on earth that you can move to, and I encourage you to do so. And stop messing about with the United States of America.